The fate of an entire civilization did not change because of a war or a prophecy. It changed because a starving girl accepted food from a stranger, and because that stranger had no idea he was feeding a future queen or binding his life to hers forever. The outpost didn't believe in quiet. Even when no one spoke, something hummed, clicked, sighed, or threatened to explode if ignored for more than 10 minutes. He liked it that way. Silence made him think, and thinking usually led to regrets, unpaid docking fees, or the memory of why he had ended up on the rim instead of somewhere respectable with gravity that didn't stutter. He was arguing with a food dispenser when he saw her. The argument was serious. The machine insisted it had already provided him with a nutrient bar. He insisted that what it had ejected was an insult wrapped in foil. The machine beeped in a tone that suggested it had won previous arguments of this nature and would win again. He was preparing his closing statement, something involving percussive maintenance, when a shape on the floor beyond the loading bay caught his eye. At first he thought it was a bundle of discarded insulation. That happens sometimes. People shed possessions the way stars shed mass, quietly and without ceremony. Then the bundle moved. He frowned, because bundles were not supposed to move unless haunted, and the outpost's last haunting had been declared resolved by a priest, a physicist, and a woman who charged by the hour and smelled strongly of ozone. He took a step closer. The shape resolved itself into limbs folded too tightly, as if whoever owned them had tried to pack themselves into a smaller version of their body. "Hey," he said automatically, because it was what you said to problems before they became emergencies. The girl did not respond. Her breathing was there barely, the kind that looked like it might forget its job if not reminded. Her skin was pale in a way that didn't match any of the usual human variations he'd memorized over the years, and when she shifted her head slightly, he saw her ears, long, elegant, swept back in a way that made his brain pause like a computer encountering an unsupported file format. "Well," he muttered, "that's new." He knelt, ignoring the protest from his knee joint, which had opinions about cold floors and poor life choices. Up close, she looked worse. Not injured exactly, just emptied, like someone had taken everything essential and left the wrapper behind. Hunger, he realized, but not the dramatic kind you saw in recruitment posters or cautionary tales. This was quiet hunger. Professional hunger, the kind that knew how to wait. He checked for obvious threats. No weapons, no tracking collar, no visible signs that touching her would trigger an interstellar incident. That last one was important. He'd caused one of those before, and the paperwork alone had aged him 3 years. "Okay," he said softly, unsure why he'd lowered his voice. "We're going to try something radical, food." He wasn't sure what aliens with long ears ate. For all he knew, she required a precise mixture of exotic gases and moonlight. But he also knew that most life, when stripped of mythology, responded well to calories. He scooped her up with more care than his arms were used to providing. She weighed almost nothing, which made his chest tighten in a way he refused to analyze. Back inside, the dispenser watched him with what he swore was smugness. He jabbed a button at random, overriding several safety warnings that flashed briefly and then gave up. The machine spat out a bowl of warmed nutrient mash, beige and unapologetic. He dipped a finger, tasted it, grimaced. "Sorry in advance." When he brought the bowl closer to her lips, her reaction was immediate. Not eager, not frantic. Precise. She sipped as if every motion had been rehearsed somewhere deep inside her, as if losing control would be worse than starvation. Her eyes opened halfway, dark and unfocused, and for a moment they locked onto his with an intensity that made him almost drop the bowl. "Easy," he said. "It's bad, but it's not poison. Probably." That earned him something like a frown. She drank more. Color, actual color, began to return to her face. When she finally pushed the bowl away with weak fingers, she looked offended, as if her body had betrayed her by needing anything at all. "See," he said, "survivable." She stared at him for a long moment, then spoke in a voice so quiet it barely registered as sound. The words were not in any language he recognized, but the tone was unmistakable. "Oh," he said. "Right. Language barrier, that's on me." He pointed at himself. Human, mostly harmless, name negotiable. She blinked. One of her long ears twitched, just slightly, and he had the absurd thought that it was listening to something he couldn't hear. When she spoke again, the words were different, halting, reshaped into something closer to trade standard. "You gave," she said, as if testing each sound for sharp edges. "Yes," he agreed. "I have that problem." She sat up slowly, then swayed, then steadied herself with a dignity that didn't match her condition. "You did not ask." "No," he said. "I find it complicates things." Her gaze sharpened. There was no exchange. "Correct. Terrible business model. I'm working on it." A pause stretched between them, filled with the outpost's ever-present mechanical sighing. Then, to his surprise, she laughed. It was brief, startled, like a sound that had been waiting a very long time for permission. He smiled before he could stop himself. She looked at the bowl again, then at him. "May I more?" He slid it back without comment. As she ate, strength continued to creep into her limbs, into her posture, into something deeper that he couldn't name. The room's lights flickered just once, then stabilized. He frowned at the ceiling. "Don't do that," he told it. "We just fixed you." The girl followed his gaze, then looked at her hands as if seeing them for the first time. Something passed across her face, confusion, recognition, and a flicker of alarm she hid too quickly. "Where," she asked carefully, "is this place?" "An outpost that forgot to die," he said. "Edge of everything, good noodles on third shift. Don't ask about the air recyclers." She nodded, absorbing this with unsettling focus. "And you are alone here." "Define alone," he said. "There are machines, they talk back." Her long ears lifted slightly. "Machines should not talk back." He snorted. "You say that now." She finished the bowl and set it aside. When she looked at him again, there was something different in her eyes, not hunger, not gratitude, but intent. The kind that made people straighten unconsciously, even if they didn't know why. "I am in your debt," she said. He waved a hand. "Let's call it lunch." Somewhere deep within the station, something old and dormant stirred, unnoticed, as ancient systems recalculated probabilities they had never expected to revisit. He missed it entirely, too busy wondering how an ordinary day had gone so spectacularly off script, and why, despite every sensible instinct he had, he hoped she wouldn't leave any time soon. She did not sleep the way humans did. He noticed that on the second cycle, when the outpost dimmed its lights and the machines lowered their collective voices to what passed for night. He had pointed at the narrow cot and made an exaggerated show of lying down, snoring theatrically, then pointing at her and raising his eyebrows in a universal gesture that meant you are allowed to stop being conscious now. She watched him try this 3 times with increasing skepticism. Instead of sleeping, she sat, still, upright, breathing slowly, eyes half-lidded, ears angled slightly back as if catching signals from somewhere beyond the walls. After an hour of this, he gave up pretending not to notice. "You know," he said from his chair, "if you're planning to murder me in my sleep, the traditional approach involves waiting until I'm actually asleep." Her eyes shifted to him. "I am not planning to murder you." "Good," he said. "I'd hate to wake up to paperwork." "I am stabilizing," she said after a moment. "Is that alien for napping?" A faint smile touched her mouth. "No." "Shame. It's a very popular human hobby." She tilted her head. "Your species rests by losing awareness. That seems inefficient." He grinned. "You should see our meetings." She didn't laugh this time, but there was a warmth in her gaze that hadn't been there before. Whatever she was doing, it worked. By the next cycle, she walked without swaying. By the one after that, she had begun exploring the outpost with quiet curiosity, touching walls, pausing near humming panels, occasionally frowning at systems that had not malfunctioned in years, and then choosing not to comment on them. The outpost, for its part, reacted to her like a nervous animal. Doors hesitated before opening. Sensors recalibrated themselves without prompting. Once, a maintenance drone rolled past her, stopped abruptly, spun in a tight circle, and powered down as if overcome with emotion. "That's new," he said. She watched the inert drone thoughtfully. "It recognizes authority." He raised an eyebrow. "Does it now?" "Yes." "Good for it." She glanced at him. "You do not believe me." "I believe a lot of things," he said. "I just don't panic until they start issuing orders." She considered this, then nodded as if filing it away for later use. They ate together. That part surprised him the most. Not that she ate, she did, carefully at first, then with growing confidence, but that she insisted he sit with her, as if meals were a cooperative endeavor rather than a biological necessity. She asked questions between bites. About humans, about why he lived here, about why the dispenser was allowed to insult people. "It builds character," he said. "Your species has an unusual relationship with suffering. We've noticed." She told him her name, or something close to it. The sounds didn't quite fit in his mouth, so she allowed him to shorten it, watching with amusement as he tried several versions and failed most of them. "You may call me what is comfortable," she said. "That's dangerous," he replied. "I'm very bad at naming things." Despite that, a rhythm settled between them. She learned his jokes, even the bad ones, especially the bad ones. He learned when not to ask questions, which was harder. Sometimes she would fall silent, her gaze distant, and the air around her would feel heavier, not oppressive, focused. During those moments, the outpost's lights would dim by a fraction, as if listening. "Do you do that on purpose?" he asked once, gesturing vaguely at the ceiling. She looked startled. "Do what?" "The dramatic lighting." Her ears flicked. "No." Huh. Later, much later, when he woke to find her standing near the viewport, stars reflected faintly in her eyes, he felt a strange pull in his chest that had nothing to do with gravity. She turned as he approached. "You saved my life," she said quietly. "Still counts as lunch," he said. She shook her head. "You gave without knowing." "People keep saying that like it's rare." "It is." She stepped closer. For a moment he was acutely aware of the space between them, of the way the outpost seemed to hold its breath. "My people," she said, "do not forget debts." He smiled, uneasy now despite himself. "Your people sound intense." "They are," she agreed, "especially when they come looking." Somewhere far beyond the outpost, ancient engines stirred, and paths long unused began to glow once more. Neither of them could see it yet. For now there was only shared space, shared food, and the fragile, ridiculous beginning of something that would one day demand crowns, vows, and a galaxy brave enough to adapt. The outpost learned fear before he did. It started with the stars behaving badly. One moment they were scattered in their usual careless way beyond the viewport. The next they folded, stretched, and rearranged themselves as if reality had decided to clear its throat. Alarms began politely, then grew offended when no one acknowledged them. He was halfway through telling a diagnostic panel that it was being dramatic when the station shuddered, not the casual rattle of loose bolts, but the kind of movement that suggested something enormous had arrived and expected to be noticed. She stood very still. That more than the alarms told him everything had changed. "Okay," he said, glancing between her and the ceiling. "If this is one of those moments where you say, 'I should have told you earlier,' I just want it on record that I hate those." "They have found me," she said. "That's not a weather update, is it?" She turned to him, and there was no weakness left in her now. Whatever hunger had hollowed her out before was gone, replaced by something old and sharp and endlessly steady. Her long ears lifted, proud and unmistakable. "I am not who you believed me to be," she said gently. He exhaled. "Please tell me you're not 3 children in a coat." "No." "Good, that's been my limit lately." Before she could say more, the outpost's main viewport flared with light. Ships emerged from folded space, vast, elegant, and unmistakably alien, their hulls etched with symbols that made his eyes ache if he looked too long. The station system screamed, then fell silent, overridden with the ease of a master entering a long-forgotten password. She knelt, not in submission, in acknowledgement. "My queen," came a voice that bypassed speakers entirely and settled directly into the bones of the station. He stared at her. "Queen." She winced just slightly. "I was going to tell you." "Sure," he said faintly. "After lunch." Her mouth curved despite herself. "Yes." The docking clamps engaged without permission. Airlocks cycled. Figures entered the outpost, tall, composed, moving with the confidence of beings who had crossed stars because she existed. They bowed to her as one. He did not bow. He dropped a wrench. One of them looked at him with open curiosity. "Is this the human?" She nodded. "This is the one who fed me." That earned him a new kind of attention, respect edged with disbelief. "She was dying," another said, "and you gave without tribute." He shrugged. "She looked hungry." There was a pause. Then unexpectedly, laughter, soft, musical, rippling through the group like a released breath. "She chose well," the first voice said. "The throne awaits you, my queen." She rose, and when she did, the outpost lights brightened, not flickering this time but steady, obedient. Power flowed where she stepped. He felt it, a hum under his skin, and realized with a quiet awe that the station had never truly been broken. It had been waiting. "I will return," she said, "but not alone." Every gaze turned to him. "Oh no," he said immediately. "No, no, I don't do thrones, I get vertigo." Her eyes met his, warm and unyielding. "You changed me," she said, "and I will not leave that unanswered." He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Does this involve paperwork?" "Yes." He sighed. "Of course it does." The journey to her world unfolded like a dream he kept waiting to wake from. Cities grown rather than built. Technology that responded to thought and bloodline alike. A people who looked at her as if the universe had finally remembered them. He stood beside her through it all, making jokes at inappropriate moments, learning when to be quiet and discovering, slowly, reluctantly, that he was no longer the man who fixed forgotten machines on the edge of nowhere. He had been seen, chosen, changed. When the crown was placed upon her head, she did not look away from him. When she asked him to stay, he did not pretend it was a question. The union was announced not as conquest but as promise. A queen who had known hunger. A human who had chosen kindness without reward. Two worlds bound not by treaties, but by a shared moment on a cold station floor and a bowl of terrible food. Later, much later, when the stars had settled into new patterns and the future felt less fragile, he stood beside her on a balcony that overlooked an entire world. "You know," he said, "this all started because a vending machine annoyed me." She laughed, leaning into him. "Then perhaps," she said, "it should be honored." He smiled, and for the first time the universe smiled back.